The year was 1942, and the world was engulfed in the most devastating conflict humanity had ever witnessed. Deep within the classified corridors of the Manhattan Project, brilliant minds worked tirelessly to unlock the secrets of atomic energy. Among them was Dr. Robert Thornfield, a 34-year-old theoretical physicist whose understanding of nuclear fission had already earned him the respect of his peers and the attention of military intelligence. What nobody could have predicted was that within weeks, Dr. Thornfield would vanish without a trace, leaving behind only questions that would haunt investigators for decades. The morning of October 15th, 1942, began like any other at Los Alamos. Scientists hurried between laboratories, their faces etched with the weight of their monumental task. The race to develop atomic weapons was not just about scientific achievement, it was about survival. Intelligence reports suggested that Nazi Germany was pursuing their own nuclear program, and time was running out. Dr. Thornfield had been selected for a highly classified mission that would take him far from the desert laboratories of New Mexico to the frozen fjords of Nazi-occupied Norway. His assignment was deceptively simple: investigate rumors of a German heavy water facility that could be crucial to their nuclear ambitions. The mission was so secret that only 3 people knew the full details of his deployment. Thornfield's expertise in nuclear physics made him uniquely qualified to assess any German research he might encounter. As he boarded the military transport that would take him to his rendezvous with a British intelligence team, colleagues noted his unusual demeanor. Where once stood a confident scientist, they saw a man burdened by something deeper than professional responsibility. The last confirmed sighting of Dr. Robert Thornfield was on October 20th, 1942, at a resistance safe house 20 miles inland from the Norwegian coast. According to the British operative who escorted him there, Thornfield had seemed increasingly agitated throughout their journey. He spoke repeatedly about patterns in the data that troubled him, though he refused to elaborate. The operative, identified in declassified documents only as Agent Cromwell, reported that Thornfield had received an encrypted message that evening, which seemed to disturb him greatly. By morning, the brilliant physicist had vanished, leaving behind only his personal effects and a cryptic note that read, "The mathematics don't lie. Time is not what we think it is." Norwegian resistance fighters launched an immediate search, scouring the mountainous terrain for any sign of the missing American scientist. German patrols intensified their activities in the region, suggesting they too were aware that something significant had occurred. For weeks, intelligence agencies on both sides of the conflict searched desperately for answers. Had Thornfield been captured? Had he defected? Had he simply succumbed to the harsh Norwegian wilderness? The questions multiplied, but answers remained elusive. As months turned to years, the disappearance of Dr. Robert Thornfield became one of the war's most perplexing mysteries. The official report, classified for 30 years, concluded that Dr. Thornfield had likely been captured and executed by German forces. His contributions to the Manhattan Project were quietly transferred to other scientists, and his name gradually faded from the official record. His wife, Margaret, received a letter informing her that her husband had died in service to his country, though the circumstances remained classified. She would spend the rest of her life wondering what had really happened to the man she loved, never knowing that the truth was far stranger than anything she could have imagined. But the story of Dr. Robert Thornfield was far from over. 31 years after his disappearance in the spring of 1973, a Norwegian construction crew was clearing land for a new highway through the mountainous region where Thornfield had last been seen. The area had changed dramatically since the war, with new towns and infrastructure replacing the remote wilderness that had once hidden resistance fighters and German patrols. As bulldozers pushed through the rocky terrain, they uncovered something that had been hidden for decades: Buried beneath layers of rock and debris, workers discovered what appeared to be a small, carefully concealed underground shelter. The structure was clearly of wartime origin, constructed with the kind of desperate ingenuity that characterized resistance hideouts throughout occupied Europe. Inside, they found the remnants of what had once been a sophisticated radio setup, long since rendered inoperable by time and moisture. But it was another discovery that would send shockwaves through intelligence communities on both sides of the Atlantic. Hidden in a waterproof container, wrapped in oilcloth and sealed with wax, was a military-issue wire recorder that had somehow survived 3 decades of harsh Norwegian winters. The device was an early model of the type used by American forces for field recordings, and despite its age, appeared to be in remarkably good condition. Norwegian authorities, recognizing the potential historical significance of the find, contacted American military attachés, who immediately classified the discovery and arranged for the recorder to be transported to a secure facility for analysis. The tape contained a single recording, approximately 47 minutes in length. The voice that emerged from the decades-old magnetic wire was unmistakably that of Dr. Robert Thornfield, though it carried a weight of exhaustion and fear that would have been unrecognizable to his former colleagues. What he had to say would challenge everything investigators thought they knew about his disappearance and raise questions that continue to perplex intelligence analysts to this day. The recording began with standard military protocol, as Thornfield identified himself by name, rank, and serial number. His voice was steady but strained, suggesting he was under considerable stress. He reported that he had discovered what he termed a conspiracy of staggering proportions, involving not just German nuclear research, but a network of double agents that extended far beyond anything Allied intelligence had suspected. According to Thornfield's account, the Norwegian mission had been compromised from the beginning, and he had been forced into hiding after narrowly escaping capture. But it was what Thornfield said next that truly stunned his listeners. Speaking with the precision of a trained scientist, he began to describe a series of events and individuals that seemed impossible for him to have known about in 1942. He mentioned by name several Soviet intelligence operatives who wouldn't be identified by Western agencies until the 1950s. He provided detailed descriptions of nuclear testing procedures that wouldn't be developed until after the war. Most disturbing of all, he spoke with apparent certainty about geopolitical events that lay years in the future. If you're finding this story as fascinating as we are, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We're just getting started, and the revelations in Dr. Thornfield's recording are about to become even more extraordinary. Thornfield's voice grew more urgent as he continued his account. He described what he claimed was a coordinated effort by various intelligence agencies to manipulate the outcome of the war through the selective sharing of scientific information. According to his testimony, certain factions within the Allied command were already planning for the post-war period, using their knowledge of atomic research as leverage in future negotiations with the Soviet Union. He provided names, dates, and operational details that would have been impossible for him to know through conventional means. The physicist's training was evident in the methodical way he presented his evidence. He spoke of intercepted communications, decoded messages, and secret meetings that he claimed to have witnessed or learned about through his underground contacts. But investigators who later analyzed the recording noted something deeply troubling about Thornfield's account. Many of the events he described with such certainty had not yet occurred when the recording was presumably made in late 1942 or early 1943. He spoke, for instance, of the death of President Roosevelt, describing it as having occurred in the spring of 1945, at a time when such information would have been impossible to predict. He mentioned the development of hydrogen bombs, a technology that wouldn't be seriously pursued until after the war's end. Most remarkably, he provided what appeared to be accurate details about the structure of Soviet intelligence operations that wouldn't be confirmed by Western agencies until the revelations of defectors in the 1960s. As the recording progressed, Thornfield's voice began to show signs of increasing distress. He spoke of being pursued by agents from multiple countries, of sleeping in abandoned buildings and caves, of living on scavenged food and melted snow. He described a world where alliances shifted like shadows, where today's ally could become tomorrow's enemy, and where the very nature of truth seemed to be in constant flux. His words painted a picture of a man pushed beyond the limits of endurance, struggling to maintain his sanity while carrying knowledge that felt too dangerous to possess. The most chilling portion of the recording came near its end, when Thornfield's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. He spoke of what he called temporal anomalies in the intelligence he had gathered, suggesting that somehow information from different time periods had become mixed together in ways that defied conventional understanding. He theorized that the stress of war, combined with his exposure to classified research, had somehow altered his perception of linear time. It was the desperate attempt of a rational mind to explain the inexplicable. But even as he struggled to rationalize his experiences, Thornfield continued to provide information that seemed to come from beyond his time. He described in detail the eventual structure of NATO, an organization that wouldn't be formed until 1949. He spoke of tensions between the United States and Soviet Union that wouldn't fully manifest until the Cold War was well underway. He even referenced specific intelligence operations that declassified documents later confirmed had indeed taken place, but not until years after his disappearance. The recording's final minutes were perhaps the most disturbing of all. Thornfield's voice became increasingly fragmented, jumping between topics and time periods with a logic that was difficult to follow. He spoke of watchers who had been observing him, of messages that arrived before they were sent, of a reality that seemed to be bleeding through from other timelines. His scientific mind was clearly struggling to process experiences that challenged every fundamental assumption about the nature of time and causality. In his last coherent statements, Thornfield provided specific instructions for anyone who might eventually discover the recording. He warned that certain individuals mentioned in his testimony would eventually rise to positions of significant power within intelligence agencies and government. He urged future listeners to investigate connections between seemingly unrelated events spanning decades. Most ominously, he suggested that his own disappearance was just one small part of a much larger pattern that would become apparent only when viewed across a broader temporal perspective. The recording ended abruptly, with the sound of footsteps approaching and Thornfield's whispered words. "They've found me. God help us all. They've found me." The wire then went silent, leaving only the soft hiss of electromagnetic noise that had been building throughout the 47-minute testimony. Intelligence analysts who studied the recording faced an unprecedented challenge. Much of what Thornfield had described could be verified through historical records, but only events that had occurred after his presumed death. The accuracy of his predictions about post-war geopolitics was unsettling, but the implications were even more troubling. If Thornfield had somehow gained access to information from the future, it raised questions about the fundamental nature of time itself. If he had not, then his disappearance suggested a conspiracy of such scope and sophistication that it challenged basic assumptions about wartime intelligence operations. Investigators began the painstaking process of tracking down every lead Thornfield had provided. They discovered that several of the Norwegian resistance fighters he had mentioned were indeed real people, though some had died during the war and others had vanished without explanation. The German installations he described were eventually located and found to contain evidence of research that aligned with his accounts. Most remarkably, When analysts compared his descriptions of Soviet intelligence networks with information later provided by Cold War defectors, they found correlations that seemed impossible to explain through conventional means. The official response to the Thornfield recording was swift and comprehensive. All copies were classified at the highest levels, and the few individuals who had heard it were sworn to secrecy. The Norwegian construction workers who had discovered the shelter were quietly relocated and provided with cover stories about their find. Even today, more than 50 years later, most details of the recording remain classified, known only to a select few within the intelligence community. But questions about Dr. Robert Thornfield's fate continue to perplex researchers and conspiracy theorists alike. How had a physicist from 1942 managed to accurately describe events that wouldn't occur for decades? Had he somehow gained access to information from the future, or was his disappearance part of an elaborate deception that spanned multiple generations? The answers remain as elusive today as they were when Norwegian workers first discovered that hidden shelter in 1973. What we do know is that the brilliant scientist who vanished into the Norwegian wilderness carried with him secrets that continue to challenge our understanding of time, causality, and the hidden connections that shape our world. His voice, preserved on decades-old magnetic wire, serves as a haunting reminder that some mysteries transcend the boundaries of conventional explanation. Whether Dr. Robert Thornfield was a prophet, a madman, or something else entirely may never be fully understood, but his legacy continues to influence intelligence operations and scientific research in ways that the public may never know. The case of the missing Manhattan Project scientist remains officially unsolved, filed away in government archives alongside countless other wartime mysteries. But for those few who have heard his final recording, the questions it raises about the nature of time and knowledge continue to resonate. In a world where the line between science and impossibility grows thinner each day, the story of Dr. Robert Thornfield stands as a testament to the enduring power of mystery and the dangers of knowledge that transcends its time. If this incredible story has captured your imagination, we encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think really happened to Dr. Thornfield? And don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories of unsolved mysteries and vanished files that challenge everything we think we know about our world.